There is place in the world where the veil between the physical and the spiritual is thin. Places where justice isn't a matter of court and gavels, but of ancient powers and inescapable consequences. In Nigeria, perhaps no place embodies this terrifying concept more than the Okija shrine, home to a deity whose very name inspires a primal fear, Ogwugwu Akpu. This isn't just a story of folklore, it's a story that has bled into the headlines of the modern world, involving politicians, police raids, and grim discoveries deep in a forbidden forest. To understand Ogwugwu Akpu, we must first understand its role as the final court of appeal. Imagine you are a farmer. Your neighbor, a powerful man with many connections, has slowly encroached on your ancestral land, stealing the inheritance meant for your children. You've gone to the elders, but they are intimidated. You've considered the police, but you know they can be bought. You have no recourse. You are powerless, but you are not without a final option. You could take that man to Okija. In its original form, the Ogwugwu Akpu shrine was a place of absolute spiritual obliteration. Before the deity, both the accuser and the accused would stand. They would swear a powerful oath, calling upon Ogwugwu Akpu to bear witness to their testimony. These rules were unbreakable. If you told the truth, the deity would vindicate you, often bringing you fortunes and ruining your adversaries. But if you swore a false oath or wear a false oath, if you lied in the presence of the spirit, your fate was sealed. The deity's judgment was not swift, but it was certain. It would follow you, unraveling your life through madness, misfortunes, or a sickness that no doctor could cure until it finally claimed your life. This power was symbolized by the Akpu tree itself, a sick cotton tree whose trunk is covered in sharp, formidable thorns. Each thorn represented one of the deity's thousands of invisible enforcement agents. When you swore an oath, you were binding yourself to this power, and there is no escape. But where did such an uncompromising, terrifying power come from? The elders say it wasn't forged by a god in the heavens. It was born from the suffering of a mortal woman on earth. Her name was Adanna. In the world she lived in, a woman was deeply tied to her ability to bear children. Adanna was beautiful, kind, and a devoted wife to her husband Ikenna. But for 10 long years, her womb remained barren. She was a tree that bore no fruit. Her co-wife Ngbeke was everything Adanna was not: fertile, proud, and cruel. Ngbeke has given Ikenna many children, and she used these as a weapon. Every day was a slow torment. In the markets, Ngbeke would loudly thank the gods for her children while staring at Adanna. She would call her the dry earth or the empty pot. The whisper of other villagers followed Adanna like a shadow. The deepest wound wasn't her, it was her husband's silence. Ikenna, a man caught between his duty to his first wife and his pride in the children of his second, did nothing to defend Adanna. He would look away when Ngbeke's words were at their most venomous. His silence was an endorsement of her cruelty, and he left Adanna utterly alone in her shame. She would often go to the elders and report to the elders, but guess what? She will be shamed and called a witch for not having children and sent home. When she gets to her empty home, she will cry all day, and Ikenna, her husband, will not even come to console her. The stepchildren often go to her farm and harvest all her crops. And when it's time for harvest, she's left with nothing. The husband won't care to protect the second wife. She was alone. She ran to the elders again, and yet the same answer. She was mocked, called a witch for not having children, and accused of being jealous because she doesn't have a child. That's why she's calling other people's children thief for stealing in her farm. And the little farm that was left for her was just a little plot of land where she farmed all year round. And when it's time for harvest, she comes in, harvests, and eats. But it was taken away by her stepchildren. The breaking point came during the New Yam Festival. It was a time of celebration, but for Adanna, it was another reminder of her emptiness. As the village danced, Mbeke, holding her youngest child, deliberately confronted Adanna in the center of the crowd. "Move aside, barren one," she said. "Lest your curse spoil my child's spirit." She then spat on the ground at Adanna's feet, an act of ultimate contempt. The laughter of the crowd was the final blow. Something in Adanna's spirit, one thing, by a decade of sorrow, finally snapped. She turned and fled, not to her empty home, but to the forest, to the ancient thorny Akpu tree that stood as a silent witness to generations of village life. There, at the base of the tree, she unleashed her agony. She didn't just weep, she raged. She screamed at the silent gods, at the uncaring earth, at the husband who had failed her. In her final moments, she did not pray for a child. She prayed for justice. She invoked a new kind of power, a power born from her own pain that would serve as a shield for the shamed and a terror to the wicked. She declared that her life would be a sacrifice to create it. Then, with a final desperate act, she took her own life. Her blood pooled at the base of the great tree, sinking into the ancient roots. Not quite long,
how could you do this?
Justice began. The elders who once mocked her start dying. Her stepchildren all died. The husband, Ikenna, followed. And this act continued for generations. People keep dying without cause. Everyone, all the villagers who laughed at her, who ridiculed her, all dead. Then one day, leaders of the village went and consulted another gods and asked why they were being killed for no reason. That was how the gods revealed that Adanna, who was once brutalized and seen as a witch, her spirit has taken over the village, causing chaos, killing people. And they asked what shall be done. And the god said a sacrifice must be made to calm her spirit. Then she should be the mother of all the villagers. Remember, she was a barren woman, but she was made the mother to all the villagers, including the king and the elders. And now, finally, the pain of a woman has turned to a revenge. All those who took earth in this desperate and evil deed has all passed away. When they got home, they did the sacrifice, and then she calmed down. And henceforth, people go there with complaints of injustice, and she will not fail to protect them and to find justice for them. For a long time, the deity served this purpose, but as 20th century gave way to 21st, this sacred power began to be desecrated. Ambitious and corrupt men, politicians and business moguls saw not a tool for justice, but a tool for control. They began bringing their rivals and underlined to the shrine not to settle disputes, but to swear oaths of loyalty under the threat of death. The deity of the powerless was being hijacked by the powerful. This dark practice came to a head in August 2004. The Nigerian police, acting on a tip-off about the shrine's activities, launched a massive raid. What they found in the sacred forest shocked the nation. Hidden in the grooves were dozens of decomposing human bodies and over 50 skulls. The shrine priests were defiant. They claimed these were not victims of murder, but the bodies of oath breakers who had been claimed by the deity's judgment. They argued that the shrine was merely a morgue for the guilty, whose family were forbidden from giving them a proper burial. But the police and much of the world saw a different story, a sinister execution, a place where inconvenient people were brought to be killed under the guise of divine justice. The Okija shrine became a global symbol of ritual magic and political assassination. The truth, as always, likely lies somewhere in the murky space between two stories. Was Ogwugwu Akpu a righteous spirit whose power was twisted by men? Or was it always a dark force, merely waiting for a vessel like Adanna to give it form? What we do know is that the story of Ogwugwu Akpu is a profound parable about justice, power, and pain. It tells us that the cry of a single suffering individual can be powerful enough to echo through eternity, and the search for justice, when denied by man, will often find a darker, more dangerous path to walk.